What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. With the Super Bowl upon us this weekend between the Chiefs and Eagles, I thought it would be a good idea to look back at recent Super Bowls and rank them. And, the reason why I wouldn't just rank all the Super Bowls is because I just haven't seen them, like I wasn't alive back then to watch. I was born in 1997. So these last 10 Super Bowls are the ones I feel the most comfortable with. I experienced these games firsthand. I wanted to talk about who I was rooting for in each of these games and just rank them today. Also, just keep in mind that this is just my opinion. Other people will have the completely different list for these Super Bowls. And with that said, let's just get right into the list, starting with number 10, which is the Seahawks versus Broncos from 2014. And I remember this being such a hyped up clash. I was rooting for the Broncos. Peyton Manning is my favorite NFL player of all time, for those that don't know. And, I was just really rooting for them to really cap off what would have been the perfect season. Broke the touchdown pass record that year, broke the passing yards in a season record that year as well. And then the Seahawks on the other side, just this powerhouse defense that just survived an amazing clash with San Francisco in the NFC Championship game. So this had all the makings of a heavyweight fight. I think Denver was actually favored in this game slightly, but it was expected to be a great game. But it was over really from the first snap. The first snap goes over Peyton Manning's head through the end zone for a safety, and the Seahawks just never looked back. It was just a complete onslaught from that point on in the game, and just a very disappointing game when I look back on, just because, look at the final score, 43-8. Just a very disappointing game for what was hyped up to be a great Super Bowl. And I think that plays into our expectations when ranking Super Bowls is, what was it really expected to be with all the storylines involved. This one had a lot of storylines, but just did not live up to the hype in terms of the game, and that's why it's at number 10. Next up on the list at number 9, we have the Rams versus the Patriots from 2019. And this game I actually considered putting at number 10 just because this was just such a slugfest. Maybe that's not the right word, but it was just such a slog to get through. Just a very boring game, basically. And even though it was in theory pretty close for most of it, I think the Patriots pulled away just at the end to make that a 2-score game. But neither team could really run the ball. I was really perplexed by just how well that Rams defense was playing against Tom Brady in that one, and really slowing down that Patriots offense. Julian Edelman brings home the Super Bowl MVP in this one, so Tom Brady wasn't really great in this game either, but the Patriots defense just had a masterful game plan for Jared Goff, got the job done, just completely shut down that Rams offense, and were able to pull out their 6th Super Bowl title with Brady and Belichick. So it has significance from that point of view, but just in terms of the entertainment value of this Super Bowl, it's got to be the worst on this list, and it really only ranks above the Broncos and the Seahawks Super Bowl because it was more competitive. Now at number 8 on the list, we have the Broncos versus the Panthers from 2016. And this game will always carry sentimental value for me because I was a huge Peyton Manning fan, like I said, and he was able to ride off into the sunset, winning his last NFL game. And, that was always a special thing for me. I think just anybody that cheered for Peyton Manning's entire career, to see him go out like that. Even though he was a shell of his former self, he just was not the player he used to be in that final year with the Broncos. But that defense just kind of carried him across the finish line. Von Miller, just outstanding. I just really enjoyed seeing Peyton Manning win the Super Bowl. But in terms of the game itself, it was quite boring, actually. Carolina was the hottest team all year, 15-1. Cruised through the first couple rounds of the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl. And the Broncos just seemed like they couldn't get anything going on offense. Basically the entire season with an aging Peyton Manning. Had a great defense, but I felt like the Broncos were probably going to fall short going into this game. But then, they just come up with a masterful game plan, shut down Cam Newton, really kind of expose him in that game, and Von Miller takes home Super Bowl MVP. So not a very entertaining game. 24-10. I think the Broncos scored one of those touchdowns just in the final couple of minutes to put the game away. And so, not the most entertaining game in the world, but like I said, it'll always have sentimental value for me just because of that Peyton Manning winning his second championship in his last season. Now moving on to number 7, and what do I actually have at number 7? I have the Buccaneers over the Chiefs from 2021. Now, this was just a crazy game because I thought a lot of people were expecting a much better game. We had Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes. I mean, the old guard versus the up-and-coming generational star in Mahomes. And it just really didn't live up to the hype. The Buccaneers really just flustered Mahomes right from the onset of the game. And Tom Brady just was locked in from the start of the game. And we just hadn't seen that to that point of the playoffs, which is why it was so surprising. The first 3 weeks of the playoffs, 3 games of the playoffs, I should say, for the Buccaneers, they weren't really locked in totally on offense. And so it was surprising that they were able to just run up and down the field on the Chiefs. It was incredibly impressive to watch. And I was just shocked that the Chiefs really didn't have a counterpunch in that game. Mahomes did make some incredible plays, but at the end of the day, only scored 9 points, and this game was pretty much over for a wide majority of it. And, just because of the shock value of it, I do put it above other ones on this list, the 3 other ones I mentioned previously. But I think that, obviously it has significance with Tom Brady winning his 7th Super Bowl and his first with a team other than the Patriots. But at the end of the day, just not a great game, and that's why it ranks at number 7. Now moving on to number 6, I have the Chiefs over the 49ers from 2020. And the final score will kind of deceive you here because the 49ers were actually up in the 4th quarter of this one. I think they had them down to a 3rd and 10 situation late in the game, or with like 10 minutes left in the game. And the game really swung on this one play. Tyreek Hill able to get deep behind the defense, make a gigantic play. The Chiefs are able to score 2 quick touchdowns and really put it out of the reach, despite being down that late in the game. So it was a pretty good game, I thought, like, all things considered. I think it was only really ruined by the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo just wasn't, on point in that game. He missed some key throws, missed Emmanuel Sanders, I believe, which would have been a touchdown late in the game. And so it was a very disappointing game from that perspective, not having that, second elite quarterback in the game, because Patrick Mahomes brought it in the game, but Garoppolo just not the same level of quarterback, and that really showed in that game. So I thought it was a good game, but just not better than the other ones I have ranked higher. And I'm just realizing now that I forgot to mention who I was cheering for in the previous few games we discussed here. So I was cheering for Tampa Bay in the 2021 game. I was cheering for San Francisco in the 2020 game. Just not a huge fan of the Chiefs because I'm a Bills fan, just the rivalry we've kind of developed there. I was cheering for the Rams in 2019 over the Patriots. Most of the time I was cheering against the Patriots, is a common theme. And then obviously I was cheering for Denver in 2016. But with that in mind, let's move on to number 5, which I have the Rams versus the Bengals from 2022, so just last year. And this game was perhaps the most likable Super Bowl matchup we've seen in a long time. On one side, you have Matthew Stafford, who struggled his entire career in Detroit. I'm a big fan of Matthew Stafford. I have a bobblehead here from my time living down in Windsor. And, I was just a huge fan of Matthew Stafford and, the journey he had in his career. I was happy to see him be able to capture the Lombardi Trophy. So I was cheering for the Rams in this game, but the Bengals on the other side, just a really good up-and-coming story. Upset the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. Joe Burrow just looking so calm and poised, and just incredible season from the Cincinnati Bengals to get to the Super Bowl, and they nearly finished it off. It was Aaron Donald making a key play on that last drive for the Bengals to stop the march on that drive, and they were able to seal the deal for the Rams to get Matthew Stafford that Super Bowl. So, I mean, this was a game that I feel like it could have ranked higher. I just doesn't really have the it's kind of hard to put a word on it. I just don't think it's as special and sentimental to me. Maybe if we're doing this ranking 5 years later, maybe it kind of improves in my mind. But I think as of right now, I have 4 matchups that I just felt like were more important in terms of entertainment value and what it means to me personally. Now moving on to number 4 on the list, and we have the New England Patriots versus the Atlanta Falcons from 2017. And this game is most commonly known as the 28-3 game, where the Falcons blow the 28-3 lead against Tom Brady and the Patriots. Biggest comeback in Super Bowl history, one of the biggest comebacks in NFL history in general, and it really just cemented Tom Brady as the GOAT in my mind, and that's kind of why it ranks such a highly on the list here, just because of the significance of the game and the comeback and everything like that. I don't think for the majority of the game it was very entertaining, but then once the Patriots got going, got a few scores, and you're like, all right, let's tune back into this thing, and pay closer attention to it. And then obviously there's that crazy Edelman catch, just insane stuff. And I was cheering for the Falcons in this game. Obviously just not a big Patriots fan as a Bills fan myself, but just incredible comeback from the Patriots. Just otherworldly stuff, and the Falcons just unfortunately will be remembered as a team that just let a championship go away, because it was really a great season for the Falcons. It just won't ever really be remembered by that because of the way it ended. And, it could have been a close game throughout the entire game, and they lost, and they probably could feel good about it. But the fact that it was 28-3, just collapsing in that game, just made it even worse for the Falcons fans. So, I think there's other Super Bowls that are better. I think this one had some great storylines, and that's why it ranks at number 4 on the list. Now moving on to number 3 on the list, we have the Ravens versus the 49ers from 2013. And I was cheering for San Francisco in this game. San Francisco was kind of my NFC team growing up. Still do like them, but back in the day, I really, really did like them because the Bills weren't in the playoffs a lot, so I had to pick teams that were actually in the playoffs to cheer for that time of year. And anyway, this was just a tale of two halves, kind of like the Patriots and Falcons game, where the Ravens really jumped out to a huge lead in this game, and then obviously the lights just completely went out on the building there in New Orleans. And after that stoppage, I believe it was like 30 minutes or so, where there was no power in the stadium, when the lights came back on, the 49ers all of a sudden woke up, made this a great game, just big plays all over the place. We had a kick return touchdown. We had explosive plays, explosive runs from guys like Frank Gore, and Joe Flacco just playing out of his mind. I always say, still to this day, Joe Flacco's playoff run with the Ravens may still be the best quarterback playoff run I've ever seen, just because it was just unbelievable how well he was playing in those games and winning games on the road. The Broncos against the Patriots, just incredible playoffs from Flacco that year, and much deserved Super Bowl title. They're able to hang on at the very last second. Comes down to a final play where Kaepernick tries to find Crabtree in the end zone. Just a really fun game. You obviously have the storyline of the Harbaugh brothers coaching against each other in the Super Bowl. So this game will always rank highly for me. I just think that there's two epic games that had to rank higher on this list for me. Now moving on to number 2 on the list, we have the Eagles versus the Patriots from 2018, where the Eagles won 41-33, one of the highest scoring Super Bowls, if not the highest scoring Super Bowl in NFL history. And this game was really great out of nowhere because I really didn't know what to expect. We had Nick Foles starting in the game for Philly, even though he started the previous 2 playoff games. Didn't know how much you could trust him because those games were home playoff games, and this was a neutral site Super Bowl against the greatest coach probably in NFL history and the greatest quarterback. And Nick Foles just played the game of his life, and it was just one of the greatest individual game performances I could ever remember in any sport. Just incredible performance, and Tom Brady played amazing too. I think he set all the Super Bowl records for like passing yards and such in that game, and just incredible back and forth, just big plays all over the place. Not a lick of defense to be found until that final play, or one of the final drives where Tom Brady gets strip sacked by Brandon Graham, I believe it was, to really seal the game for Philly. But just an amazing back and forth game, incredible plays made by both sides, and it shows you that the Patriots had some heartbreaking Super Bowl losses as well, even though they had so many victories. So this was a great game, but I still have one more game that ranks higher. And then finally, at number 1 on the list, we have the Patriots versus the Seahawks from 2015, where the Patriots won the game 28-24. And in my opinion, this is the game I think about when I think about just excellently played football. You had the storylines because you had the Seahawks, who were just coming off a Super Bowl victory, a dominant one at that, the previous year against the Broncos. But then you kind of had the Patriots, where they were a couple years removed from their Super Bowl title. I think they were actually 10 years removed from their last Super Bowl title, I should say, in 2004. But they had made it to so many Super Bowls. Could they get it done in the big game? It could have been their 3rd straight Super Bowl loss after those 2 losses against the Giants. So it could have been really bad for the Patriots if they had lost this game in terms of what it meant for them going forward at that point in time. But the Patriots were able to really dig deep and win this game. This game was just fight back and forth. You had the great defense of Seattle looking to repeat as Super Bowl champions and really become potentially the dominant team of that era. Whereas the Patriots were looking to defend that title in terms of trying to maintain that presence as the best team of that era. And it was just an excellent back and forth game. The Seahawks actually took a 10-point lead in the 4th quarter, but then Tom Brady said, it's time to get serious, and drove them down the field for a couple of scores to win the game. And then, the Seahawks had the chance, obviously, to end it and get the game-winning touchdown at the end. But then they decided to throw the ball at the goal line, intercepted by Malcolm Butler. And there's nothing that just really compares to how that Super Bowl ended for me. And I was cheering for the Seahawks like a lot of people. The Patriots, very unpopular around this time with football fans. But what an ending to that game. That interception, just the shock of everybody. There's just nothing that compares to it. I thought that game had it all. It had the elite storylines, 2 great quarterbacks, just the crazy comeback at the end by Brady, and just what it could have meant for the Patriots dynasty. Like I said, if they had lost that game, who knows? Maybe they don't go on to win 2 more Super Bowls with Brady and Belichick, but they get that done. What a game that was, and for me, that ranks as the best Super Bowl I've ever seen, even if we go beyond going back before 2013, just in terms of the ones I've seen with my own eyes. That one's got to be right up there as the number 1 spot, because, like I said, it just had everything you could ever want as a football fan. But with that said, that is just the way I would rank these past 10 Super Bowls. Let me know what your list would be down in the comments section, and with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.